On May 7th, Tony Award nominated Broadway actress, singer, writer, Manhattan native, and much more. Melissa Errico will perform The Story of a Rose, a musical reverie on the Great War at the Schlesinger Center in Alexandria, Virginia. Melissa has dazzled us all with performances in Dracula, Les Mis, High Society, White Christmas, and more, debuting new works at the Met Cloisters and Carnegie Hall, and sharing stages with people like Alec Baldwin, Jerry Stiller, and many others. Great to see you, Melissa.
Great to see you. Yeah, you're making me look forward to. I have worked with Alec Baldwin. We did a very strange play. It wasn't strange. It's quite fascinating. It was called The Gift of the Gorgon, which was written by the same man who wrote Equus, and it had never been seen in the United States. And I debuted it with Alec. And this summer, we're being reunited again to read the letters of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda. And we're doing a play. I'm getting him back on the stage and back into the world.
That's fantastic. And we'll talk about that play in a moment. This show, that's a moving tribute to love and sacrifice, is really your most personal role yet, I believe, embodying your Aunt Rose, a Ziegfeld Folly star and an Italian immigrant living through World War I. Can you tell us when you first learned about the story of Rose?
Well, you see, I grew up knowing that my mother always said, we have a Ziegfeld girl in the family. I always knew that we had fascinating Italian immigrant family. I knew my grandmother better, who was her sister. It's my mother's mother. Aunt Rose wanted my mother to be her daughter. So she was drawn to our family. It was my mother is the youngest of a large family, grew up in Brooklyn. I come from Italian family on both sides, immigrants. And my Aunt Rose always wanted a child. And so I grew up with this sort of strange image of this great showgirl who was also kind of obsessed with my mother and gorgeous. And there were pictures around the house of this showgirl. There was pictures of her in feathers, pictures of her having autographed "Love Chucky" by the 30s. She had an identity as Chucky. She was working with Claudette Colbert and more into film. So she was an interesting character in my life. But to be honest, I didn't really get into digging about who she really was until I started working with Stephen Sondheim. And he wrote a musical called Follies, about Follies girls who come back to the New Amsterdam Theater. And my Aunt Rose danced at the New Amsterdam. And I just looked that fact up. And the more I understood Sondheim, the more I understood his obsession. And that became my point of entry in terms of doing personal research into this side of the family. I'd always been interested in the fact that my grandmother, her sister, was a beautiful lyric soprano, and she was not allowed to sing. And her husband, an Italian immigrant himself, who served in the First World War, he wouldn't let her sing. He said it was an unsavory life, and it was the wrong thing for a classy girl like her, or that he wanted her to be, or them to be, a family. He was a doctor as well. So she was forbidden to sing. So I grew up knowing that this family was so artistic and also passionate and opinionated and full of drama. But the drama of the Ziegfeld girl is something that Sondheim made me more interested in. And the farther I got to it, I realized that the Ziegfeld stories are very, very interesting. I won't digress too much because I never talk about how I'm using it for the First World War, but the history of this Follies is fun. And there was something called the Midnight Frolic. And the Midnight Frolic was after the show at the New Amsterdam Theater, which Sondheim was so interested in as it was being demolished. He thought, oh gosh, there goes American history. And he wrote a musical about that. But in that New Amsterdam stage, all these beautiful shows happened, women in feather headdresses and parading up and down stairs, dressed as birds and battleships and things, all this wonderful stuff. After the show, there was a show upstairs, which became the Schubert office. And there was a show called The Midnight Frolic. It was late at night, and the most beautiful girls were chosen, and it's there where a lot more fun would happen. The Midnight Frolic is where the famous balloon dance comes from, where the girls had balloons around them and the men would pop them. And it was a kind of striptease, And so it's just a ridiculous party. And also, I think there was a floor that was glass, and the girls would be walking around and the men could look up their skirts. I mean, crazy things. The Midnight Frolic was what we call a good time. And this is before we could all go home and watch television. There was no movies, there was no film, there was no streaming, there was obviously no telephones, there was no radio. So you would go to this Midnight Frolic if you were wealthy enough to stay super late. You could see girls up their skirts and pop balloons, and it's just a big party. Well, wouldn't you know, some of my friends and fans are quite intellectual, and they started finding the playbills of the Midnight Frolic, and Aunt Rose was in it. And that
That's
told me something
amazing.
about her. Yes, it told me something about her, that she was a superlative showgirl and fun and good time and uniquely beautiful. And then I called my cousin Debbie, who works for the Voice of America. She's much older than me. She lives in Washington. She did beautiful service like you do as a journalist, disseminating ideas and so on. She worked at the Voice of America for ages, and she was on Obama's plane, which I was always so proud. And I love my cousin, and she loves history. So I got her involved, and she started to find news articles about Aunt Rose. And there were wonderful things about her. Apparently, she was Ziegfeld's one of his favorites. He met her when she was very young, was too young to work. So there's some fishy story there about her being underage. And there's wonderful articles. She participated in a article that was written in the newspaper about who is smarter, blondes or brunettes. So they had all these beautiful blondes and all these beautiful brunettes, and they asked them questions, and then they had some kind of, they were tied up to some, I could look it up, some kind of machine that would decide if their brain was triggering. It's like the early tests about if blondes have more fun. Just crazy things like this. So she became more and more interesting to me, and maybe albeit I'm getting older. So I'm looking for the mischief in my past, some of the idealistic things that guided me and made me an actress, my beautiful, forlorn grandmother with her beautiful voice, my own wonderful mother. But I don't think that the mischief and the sophistication of a Ziegfeld girl was something I would have understood until this more radical midlife that I'm in. Don't we get better as we get older?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wonder what Rose would think of Melissa.
Oh, well, she liked me because she bought, is this a visual interview?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
She actually bought me an amazing outfit when I was little. I'm not sure I could find it in time, but just imagine, it was from, my mother said it was from Bonwit Teller, which all your listeners who are older will remember, this beautiful store. And she bought me this adorable white thing with ruffles. It had a little jacket and pants, and there's all these charming pictures of me going like this. She must have told me to do this with my face, right? I was like 2.5. And my mother said she would bring all these boxes and crazy, beautiful clothing for me. So I hope I'm answering your questions.
Yeah, well, yeah, because obviously she didn't see all the success that you've had since, but
Oh, but she
she
liked
but
me.
yeah,
I think
but
so.
I'm sure she would be so proud of Melissa
I hope
Errico.
so. Thank you. I'm really doing a nice thing for her insofar as I'm remembering her. I'm celebrating her. Many people will get to see her beauty, her photography, the pictures of her taken by Alfred Cheney Johnson. But I hope she'd be quite proud. I mean, I can tell you more about the show and how I structured it, but I do have no cynicism in my body, so I'm no way ever making fun. It's more that she was a source of beauty and life, and in some ways, this was the beginning of women's empowerment. This is before there were women's votes. I realized they were being judged by their beauty, and in that way, it's still limiting. But they were making money, they were working hard, and they were empowered. They had careers, and they went to work. And that, my mother said, was different than anyone in the history of our family.
Hmm. This show is
So,
presented by the Gary Sinise Foundation and produced by the Doughboy Foundation. The story of Rose is under musical direction of acclaimed jazz pianist Ted Firth and his big band period ensemble. You sing wonderful songs of patriotism and protest, loss
yeah,
and longing. Did many
yes.
of these popular wartime songs, do they have more meaning for you now?
Oh, I didn't even know them. I didn't even know them. You see, when I was always telling the story in my Sondheim concerts, that's how I was discovered by the military commission that's asked me to create this. They saw me in one of my concerts. I've really enjoyed a concert career. I have teenage children, and as I was raising my family, writing concerts, writing essays for the New York Times, and in general, authoring my own life seemed wise and something I could do at my own with my own energy. And so as I was, doing my concerts, I would tell the audience a little bit about Aunt Rose and Nonna, and that they came to America. They were the boat was shipwrecked. It ended up in Boston. They took a bus to the Bronx, and their father dropped dead at the customs shed of a heart attack. And the mother told them to go out and make a living no matter what it takes. And they became seamstresses underage. They were child labor. They became seamstresses sewing uniforms for the First World War. I used to tell that in passing. I would just be setting up Folly's girl story so that I could sing Foxtrot and losing my mind and I'm just a Broadway baby. These songs. You see, Aunt Rose was discovered in her night job where she was a waitress, and Ziegfeld's talent scout saw her and recruited her basically to the Follies. And I tell these stories in passing. Someone was in the audience and said, could you find within that story and your love of research and your love of history and as you see, I'm a big talker. So we need someone to narrate. We would love someone who would take the time to learn the music of the First World War and tell your family story, even if it's just about a seamstress, and invent something, make a play or a concert. And the more that I thought about it, I said yes. And I learned that the popular music of the United States that sort of precedes even jazz, really ragtime, the beginnings of Tin Pan Alley. If you wanted to hear these songs, you would hear them in the vaudeville houses, or you would hear them in your house where you take sheet music and play it on the piano. The vaudeville theaters were everywhere, and the height of vaudeville was Ziegfeld's Follies. So I'm using the world I feel attached to, the world I was born into, to sing the music. And the music, I'm not making this up. This is the music that was sung in the Follies. So I'm using Rose and I'm kind of becoming her. And then I come in and out of that reality. And then I narrate the war because I've been asked, Douglas, to use what I know to transmit the facts of World War I and the importance of World War I and the losses of World War I and the culture and the country surrounding that war. So in the end, I feel like I'm using the world of the theater, the world of my family, in order to tell a story that's nothing to do with the theater and my family. It has everything to do with the military. I hope you'll watch an actor learn the power and the gravitas of the commitment of the military worldwide, but especially in this case, our countrymen. So I hope you'll watch a play that's done by this fun midnight frolic lady, but in the end, you watch me learn about the war, narrate the war, and use what I know in order to be completely floored, to be honest, with respect, totally floored.
I love history too, and that's why I was fascinated to do this interview with you. And first of all, is there a particular tune that means more to you than the others right now?
A particular song. Well, there's a song called The Lads in Their Hundreds, which is a beautiful song about the boys that will never grow old. And it occurs in the last section of the show where I no longer wear costumes. You're going to see beautiful costumes. When I walk out, you're going to feel the time. I'll be in the most beautiful clothes that are made by the man who made the costumes for the Gilded Age television show and Mrs. Maisels. I mean, the real maker of the clothes. So I will look the part. Then I will have some military beautiful military clothes. Then at the very end, I sing two songs that are commonly, not commonly sung, but they're still sung in war memorials. One is called The Lads in Their Hundreds, and it's about the boys that will never grow old. I love that so much. And there's another song called The Last Rose of Summer, and that's a traditional Irish song. And we do those songs a little bit more contemporary, as if it's me now processing everything I've learned and honoring all the lost boys as a mother myself. So I think it's the last third that's very touching to me. Those two songs. Nina Simone did a beautiful job with The Last Rose of Summer, and she's my inspiration. Someone like Nina Simone, my own version of Nina Simone, a earthy, eclectic artist who's processing this story. And because my Ziegfeld aunt's name was Rose, I was looking for songs that had the word rose in the title. And wouldn't you know it, World War I is filled with songs about roses, filled with them. There's a beautiful song that Sinatra loved called The Roses of Picardy. And I sing that too at the beginning. So there's two Rose songs in the show. Don't worry, it's not all Rose songs. It's just two.
I'm
But the
also curious the fact that you're talking about Nina Simone and you talk about the power of women during this era. Your three teenage daughters, what are they talking to you about this show?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, they know that I'm taking it really seriously. So there's a kind of seriousness in the house right now. I mean, people are having fun, they're doing their thing. They're right now in the States for National History Day themselves. They're twin, I have twin daughters home, and my eldest daughter is at Duke studying um, politics and the world economy, which luckily someone out there will know something. It'll be my daughter. And my twins are 16 and they are working on their National History Day project. And I think they're motivated to do a good job. I mean, their project is about Eleanor Roosevelt and they made a documentary film. But my youngest twin, youngest by 1 minute, is heading up the youth division of the Doughboy Foundation because she got so interested in it. So she started a website for young kids, and she's finding wonderful research about World War I that children would be interested. Like there were donuts that they made there. There were dogs that were pivotal to the success of certain fights. And there was Cher Ami, the famous pigeon that was shot down in the Argonne battle. And even though it was shot in the chest and it lost its leg, the pigeon knew it had to get back that letter, and it got there and it became a war hero. The pigeon itself knew somehow it had to get there. It's so moving. I could literally cry on television here.
Mm.
So my children are also teaching me back. My daughter goes, I said that in my website. I said, no, I know. I learned about it from you the other day. Oh, she said, well, that's on my website. Well, that's on my website. So
What a great sharing experience this
I'm
is for you.
telling you, Douglas, it's the wonderful thing about being trying to be an actor who's not always waiting for the phone to ring is that something like this happens. And if you work really hard and keep digging and digging and digging, you can make things. We can all make things. And I'm so grateful that I've been given this chance to make this, can share it with my family. And I just noticed that my name on the screen says Kath Britton, just as anybody's wondering, it's Melissa.
I don't think anybody
So
doesn't know that you're Melissa right now. And
right,
this is all
it's been pretty cool. Yeah,
yeah,
it's been pretty
yeah, it
cool. My
really
kids
is.
are into it. And I cry sometimes because I was telling them about the Lost Battalion, which is the most awful, harrowing story of this American unit led by Whittlesey, I believe, Charles, and he was a young lawyer from New York, and he was a shy person, and he led these boys into the forest, and he thought there were Americans on one side and French on the other, and they had retreated, and he got lost connection, and they were in the forest surrounded by Germans, and it's unbelievable, the suffering and the loss. And then I teach my children about the Harlem Hellfighters, and they're super interested in James Reese Europe. And I went to the Harlem Armory with my boss, with the producer, and I met Noble Sissle Jr. It's incredible. And the idea that if anybody can possibly go another day without knowing what the Harlem Hellfighters, just listen, to learn now. They were the greatest American soldiers and musicians, both. African American soldiers who fought and made music and introduced jazz to Europe, and it never left. They changed the world, and they were the best fighters we had. They were remarkable human beings.
And I just spoke recently with an author of many World War I books, so I know all about what you're talking about. And you mentioned it earlier. This World War I does not get the attention that the other wars have had through the years. So that's why this is a wonderful tribute to
Yeah.
those who not only served, both men and women who were involved in the war effort.
Mhm.
Working with people like Ted Firth as your musical director, and also the show features Broadway actor George Abood. What's it been like working with both of them?
Well, I've worked with Ted for 15 years. He's been reading my mind for 15 years. He's amazing. He's really enjoying this. Um, there's a lot of jazz in it. He's a trained jazz musician. He's put together a big jazz ensemble for this, so it's a big opportunity for him. He's a wonderful arranger. Ted can read my mind. So Ted and I have been doing deep dives into themes and theme shows where I talk and sing for a long time. We've done 2 albums of Stephen Sondheim's music, one looking at his lyrical, empathic, philosophical songs, and another, which we're touring right now, is about Manhattan. And it's all about ambition and marriage, and it's edgy, and it's all about what a mess it is in New York and how we couldn't live without it. There's that. And we've also done deep dives into French music, the music of Michel Legrand and Charles Trenet, and romance and sexy things, in that way. We've also done very in-depth concerts about film noir, the whole world of cinema and entrapment and fate and sex and danger and mystery and trust. We did that during the pandemic because it seemed apropos as we were all entrapped. So I got interested in film noir, and we got interested in film noir jazz, and we made a record. So working with Ted, he's like, here's Melissa doing it again, But what's so wonderful about Ted is that he's responsive. I think that he knows he's a great accompanist and he likes to support, but he's very much his own poet. So when I say that the show is all follies, but it finishes with a more contemporary feeling, even though I'm still singing words that were written in 1918, he plays, he knows what I'm doing. He knows that the stage is more spare. There's not so much feather boas and things, and it's all about the boys. It's about my grandfather's sword. My mother heard I was doing this, and I sat and was chatting with her about Vietnam. My father served in Vietnam, and I was asking about her father and the First World War. She says, well, I have Babo's sword in the house. I said, what? This is where things. So she brings a sword out, this huge sword, and I open it, and it's all hand carved with flowers. He was an American immigrant, but he was a reservist and went back, and you had to serve with the Allies. There's a lot of entanglements during the First World War of if you're American or if you're your native country, but you still go back and fight for the Allied forces. There were Americans serving in the French forces called the Lafayette Escadrille. There was all kinds of crissing and crossing. So my mother shows me the sword. Then if I tell Ted, it's just going to be you at the piano and a sword on the piano, and I'm going to be in black. And he just starts to play because I give him an image and he sees and he hears me cry and he starts to play. And then I say, can you just put a little more time in there? Because I'm saying that I'm going to scatter these leaves. I'm going to scatter the leaves. This is in a Last Rose of Summer. I'm jumping to another song. And I say, Ted, the next thing I say is, so soon may I follow So soon may I follow. I said, Ted, you know what I'm saying is that everyone is dead. And all these people in the story are dead, but someday I will follow. I said, so can you play a little? Let me sit for a minute and then offer my own life and death to the song. And so Ted will do things like that. He'll play extra bars and he knows I'm pulling myself together to say, so soon may I follow, you know. So that's the relationship we have. I'll say to him what I'm feeling, and then we don't talk much. We're like a weird marriage, but we don't talk much.
We'll talk about your marriage in a little bit as well, because you are married to a very famous individual. Patrick McEnroe, of course, the wonderful tennis star, the 1989 French Open doubles champion, longtime tennis broadcaster Patrick McEnroe and Melissa Errico have been together for a long time, and they're one of the wonderful couples that are in New York. And
Do you know that we've been together so long? As my mother said, it's unusual, our story in the world. I met him when I was in kindergarten. We grew up together. He was my older brother's best friend.
wow.
And when we re-met in New York, we knew each other our whole lives. And the first thing we remembered was the name of each other's pets. Like I remembered Charlotte and he remembered Brandy, things that kids would remember about the kids. Like we were children and we totally grew up together. My mother was over the other night, and there was a little line of ballerinas, and I was 5, and there was so many ballerinas, and my mom's gotten older, and she says, "Which one is Melissa? Which one is Melissa?" I said, "Mom, I think I'm the tall one with my legs apart." And she couldn't see, and Patrick came over and goes, "Yeah, that's her."
That's
And my mother said, "Patrick, do you know how unusual that is that you can spot Melissa in a crowd of ballerinas at 5 because you knew her then?"
I love it. Well,
Amazing, right? My
yeah,
mother said, "Weird is that and wonderful is this?" Yeah.
yeah, it's also a great love story. So
It's
maybe,
good, right?
yeah, maybe that will be.
We had a fight right after that. I was annoyed at him about something. My mother said all these nice things, and then I asked him to do something, and he didn't want to do it right then. He wanted to do it tomorrow, and I was like, I want you to do it now. Anyway.
You have this desire to portray historical women, especially your upcoming role that you mentioned, Zelda, in a play about the letters between her and F. Scott Fitzgerald. Why do you enjoy the historical roles? You kind of talked about it, but I guess it's this love of history, right?
Yeah, I think it's research. You know, I was an art history major. I went to Yale. I was an art history major, and I got interested in art history because every time you look at a painting, there's a character. It's either the character of the diseased painter who made this and had no money, and I had just got all involved in the story, or Toulouse-Lautrec, who's in the music halls and lighting these women with these weird things, and they're dancing. And I got all interested in the stories of art, and I got interested in sometimes women's stories like Artemisia Gentileschi, the painter in the Baroque period. So I'm not necessarily, Meryl Streep, where I can suddenly turn around and make you think, wow, that's the Queen of France. But um, I do like studying the past. I love the clothes. I love the art. I love the idea that I just did a musical about the Queen of France, I'm thinking, with David Shire's music and Adam Gopnik's writing. We did it in the cloisters, the medieval cloisters, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art produced it. And I wore beautiful clothes, and we sang in the world of it's like bringing history to life it's like art history that sings. I like that. I like that. I like people to remember the past.
This
I don't
show
know.
on May 7th now, it's being live streamed. So tell us how people can see the show.
Well, you go to doughboy.org and get all your information there. It's on May 7th at 7:30, and just go to doughboy.org and get all the rest of the information. I think I have, here we go. Here's the poster. So that's Aunt Rose, and that's me a little bit in the spirit of her, and these are the Doughboys. And I'll read to you what you need to know. Doughboy Foundation, it's at the Schlesinger Concert Hall, May 7th. And just go to doughboy.org. You can scan this for tickets if you want to scan your screen. Can you imagine this might work? people might actually be scanning this right now.
I think it's great,
How crazy, right?
and well they should.
Yeah, it's a very very techie of me to be able to provide that. So it's just beautiful. And George Abood must mention that he does a variety of onstage roles. He is a young talent, right at the same level, unique to himself, of a Mandy Patinkin. He's a great character actor and a great actor. So I have enlisted him to play all the different men in my imagination. And I think of him as genius, as like a Charlie Chaplin. So he'll come, he'll hand me something, we'll do some magic today, we'll do something together. He doesn't sing all the songs, he sings sometimes, but he gives a level of artistry and storytelling that's very important for the fun of immigrant story, the fun of the Follies, where you need a comedian. He tells jokes because Eddie Cantor always introduced the girls. And then you have a boy, and he could have been, I think he's young enough, maybe not quite to be my son, but the idea that we have a male on stage is so important because the more I study this, the more floored I was by how lonely they were out there, the writing of letters, the lifelines of letters, the relationships, the saving of each other's tags when they died. The song "My Buddy," for example, losing your friends. My grandfather lost his best friend, died in his arms in a trench, and he always used to tell my mother the story. And my mother said, "Oh, Babu always said, you want to hear the story." And they were in the trench, and he heard this unbelievable explosion, and he turned to his best friend. "Did you hear that?" And just by 5 inches, his I'm not going to say this in this show, and I hope that the podcast audience won't be troubled by it, but his brain was all over my grandfather's jacket. I won't say that on stage, but I'll say it to you. I haven't said that
Hmm.
in an interview. I hope that's not too strange. But
No. Hmm.
within 5 inches, his best friend, these boys all saw death in ways we still cannot in any way imagine. And no book or report could ever contain the grief. And I hope the songs, in some way, not that they capture the pain, but they connect us to the past. These are the songs of that time. So even though I'm just me, I hope that with the music that I will tie you into the people of the past will live again for a moment.
Hmm.
I hope.
Powerful stuff, Melissa.
I
We
think
have
so, right? That
just
was
about
really,
a we have just about a minute left here. I did want to mention earlier I had said that Patrick McEnroe, your husband, was on Sports Jam back in 2016. We had a wonderful conversation about, but you two kind of share the same thing. Practice, practice, practice. You practice singing, he practices playing tennis and teaching people. So it's a wonderful match between you two.
yes, yes. And Mrs. McEnroe is very close to her, and she actually set us up. I said it's like an arranged marriage, and she used to say yes. She told him to call me. She saw me in the New York Times. But she discouraged Patrick from being a tennis player. She had John, who's the greatest tennis player in history. She knew it, and she used to discourage Patrick. And Patrick didn't listen, and he did what he was going to do, and she supported him, of course. But Patrick is humble, and he's always got this attitude that even when you win a tennis match, you lose most of the points.
Mm,
He transmitted that to me as I've had lots of ups and downs. Yes, I have a caricature at Sardi's. Yes, I've done a few great Broadway shows, or a bunch, but then I've had a lot of disappointments. I've had ups and downs. My husband has always said a tennis match is made of almost 50% of losses. And I learned a lot from my husband about persistence and maybe humility, not entirely, because you have to have a little fancy grandeur to be an artist. You have to think people would love to come, and you want to entertain, and but it comes, of course, from some complex place of security and insecurity, which we know. But my husband has just taught me to keep going.
yeah.
And I even have rehearsal today. You see, I'm in my rehearsal room, and I know he had to work today. I said, "Oh, don't bother picking me up." And he texted me back, "I'm picking you up."
Before we run out of time, May 7th, Melissa
I said,
Errico.
"Here, no need to be busy. I'm picking you up."
May 7th, Melissa Errico will perform The Story of a Rose, a musical reverie on the Great War at the Schlesinger Center in Alexandria, Virginia. It will be live streamed so you can see it. It's been indeed a great pleasure. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, Melissa. Continued
Thank
success to you and Patrick and your three daughters.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, especially the girls. Thank you.